Hi, Heather. So good to be with you.
Great to be with you today.
Mm.
It's amazing
Uh,
how we can do this across the ocean.
Amazing, and I'm so grateful for it, and so grateful to connect with you. Naturally, the podcast episodes lately, just been checking in with people and seeing how you're doing through these current times we're in. So, how are you and Benjy in Oregon?
Well, we're incredibly lucky people, is how we feel. You know, we've been touring musician, touring kirtan artists for the last 20 years, and all of a sudden this year everything came to a standstill. And in fact, it's kind of an interesting story because we were on the way to India and, packing up, and it's a pretty, for me, going to India for several weeks, it's quite a phenomenon, the way that I pack and plan for the trip and organize the tour. The group that we were planning to co-lead there was David Newman. And so Benji started getting this really strong feeling that we shouldn't go because it was right around the time that COVID was just appearing on the scene. And so he was getting this feeling, and I was thinking, we've got, 25 people that are going to be coming to India and to meet us, so I don't feel like I can just not show up, right? And we were doing our own pilgrimage first to South India, to visit some of the Shiva temples that are really central to my meditation lineage. And he decided to try to go on the trip and that it would be okay. But when we were on the way to the airport, he just started feeling really, really strongly that we should not go. And we actually got up to the ticket counter, and the lady at the counter said, "Where are you going today?" And I said, "Well, we might be going to Chennai." And then Benji just said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it."
Wow.
So it was quite dramatic for me. We went and we sat across from the ticket counter and just sat there for a while. And
Yeah. Wow.
I cried. And but I also realized that I didn't want to completely try to push him past his intuition if he felt something really strongly. And we had to call the house sitter and say, "Hey, you know what? We're not leaving for a month after all."
Hmm.
Um, but we got home, and within a couple hours, we found out that our South India trip was being canceled. And then the next week, our North India trip canceled. And we did indeed have friends in India that were stranded there for months and not able to
Yeah.
get home for like 3 or 4 months. So,
Right.
it was a total blessing that he had this intuition and that we were able to listen and honor that.
Wow.
And being home, we live in a really beautiful place in Oregon. The Pacific Northwest is stunning. We have a really comfortable home. And so we've been kind of joking about being quarantined in paradise.
Right. So have
Unlike,
we actually. Yeah.
yeah, if you got to be stranded somewhere and you
Hmm.
live somewhere beautiful, it's very fortunate. We're also extremely lucky that somehow, with all the touring that we did, we have some royalty income coming through Spotify and other streaming platforms that is able to support us enough right now that we are not in a financial, disaster. And so many people we know have lost, everything that they've put
Hmm.
decades into, musicians that can't work, all the yoga studios where we've been playing for decades, some of them are closing. So,
Yeah, a lot of them
it's
are,
pretty
aren't they?
catastrophic in the yoga world and the kirtan world, the economic
Hmm.
impact of all this. And so I just feel grateful. I give thanks every morning. I give thanks every night. And, as I said before, it's sort of one day at a time. We don't know
Hmm.
what's going to happen, but we're using the opportunity to do things that we've been wanting to do artistically, creatively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This album that you've been working on that will probably be released right when this gets released. So it's nice and timely. This Live to Love project. Please talk about that. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. This is a project that we started 3.5 years ago. And we did a Northwest tour. We had a friend who was filming the tour. And, because we've been on the road so much, it was just really hard for us to take what we got and bring it to completion. Some things came out of it, like our video of Govindam, which is by far our most popular video, came from that tour. And we made another video called Mahadeva from that tour. but we never really got the audio all the way to completion. And so we did a little bit more recording last fall in Rochester, New York, recorded a couple more pieces that we'd been wanting to get on the album. And so finally, this spring and summer, Benjy really went back to work on it. We worked with another audio engineer named Frank Stearns, who is a fantastic engineer. And yesterday, we finished all the music and uploaded
Congratulations.
it into the world.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was
Wow.
it was an exciting day yesterday after 3.5 years.
Wow.
And Benjy's just been working day and night sometimes. And so our friend who videoed the tour 3.5 years ago is working on another video now, and we're doing a special video to release in conjunction with the live album. We have a chant called Jai Gurudev, and for years and years we've been opening our kirtan with that chant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are offering it as a tribute to Neem Karoli Baba, to Siddhi Ma, his lineage holder who followed him, and then Ram Das, who died at the beginning of this year. And so we are going to be weaving in beautiful photos of them, some nature photos of North India, and offering that as a tribute to them. And September 11th is the anniversary of Neem Karoli Baba's Mahasamadhi, the day he left his body. And so we're going to be launching our album at the official release that date and have the video that day, do a video premiere on YouTube and a little Zoom meeting for people that want to come on and visit with us.
Oh, beautiful. Please share the links and I'll put it in the show notes and we'll really get it out there. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Exciting time for us.
And please share of how Neem Karoli Baba came into your life and then how Ram Das came into your life, how that all unfolded.
Yes, very profound part of my life. And I believe it's something that we share. And so you have a personal connection to this too. I was always somebody, though, that was really skeptical about gurus. I didn't really believe that people were having this authentic experience. I just thought maybe they were kind of faking it or in a cult, or I didn't know, I just didn't understand.
Yeah, same.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
So, but I ended up, leading kirtan. It was a path that I never expected, but I fell absolutely in love with it. And so I was accompanying a retreat in southern Utah, way up on a mountaintop, and there was a little tiny bookstore, and it had a book called Miracle of Love, which was a book about Neem Karoli Baba, who we call Maharaji. And the book was compiled and edited by Ram Das. And I was around Krishna Das quite a lot in those days. And of course, Maharaji is his teacher as well. So I was curious about the book, and I just started reading it. And one night I went to sleep. And in my dream, I walked into the yoga room at the retreat center. And in the yoga room, there were really pictures of saints all around the perimeter of the room on every wall. So in my dream, I walked into that room and there was a picture of Maharaji. And when I looked at the picture, a lightning bolt came out of his eyes and went straight into my heart. And in my dream, I was literally falling over. I was so dizzy and so full of energy that I really couldn't even stand up, and people were helping me. And
wow.
When I woke up, I didn't really think of the dream right away. But when I got back into the yoga room and we were sitting there, before class began, I was looking up at the wall at the pictures of the saints, and I'm thinking, wow, that really was quite a dream. And that was just the beginning of a journey. It was a long, slow process for me. I didn't go through a big born again thing, but after having a series of dreams like that at really critical points of my life, really crucial moments, it made me realize that I'm not alone, that consciousness transcends death, that there are beings that are there on the other side of having died that are accessible to me, that are there for me and can help me through my life. And it's nothing that I would have ever come to intellectually, but it's something that I just directly experienced at these really critical moments. Another thing that happened, right before we made our first trip to India, I was afraid to go. And I kept really kind of avoiding. I was just sure I was going to get sick and all these things were going to happen to me, when I went there. And again, I had a dream, and that somebody handed me a program from a movie theater. And when I looked at the back of it on the bottom, there was a phone number that said Maharaji, and it had a phone number. So in my dream, I thought, well, I'm gonna call the number. And sure enough, there was this ashram in India that I was calling, and an American guy answered, and I said, is Maharaji there? And he said, just a minute. And he put him on the phone with me, and it was this sweet conversation, just like old friends that love each other that haven't talked forever. And finally he said, are you coming soon? I said, no, Maharaji, I'm not. He said, you should come soon.
Wow.
And that was the end of the conversation.
Oh, wow.
So I got on the phone with my dear friends and Rick and Shar, friars, and we all went. So just, I've had several things like that were really profound. And the trip was wonderful. Nothing bad happened at all. In fact, a lot of good, really good things happened on the trip.
Wow, how beautiful. And then Ram Dass came into your life a bit later?
Yes. Well, so no, actually, it was probably around 2000, the early 2000s. Maybe, yeah, somewhere in the first few years of 2000. What happened is that there was this whole thing where Benjy ended up playing tabla for Krishna Das, or playing Esraj with Krishna Das. And that's a whole other story about how that ended up happening. But I was tagging along as the drummer's girlfriend, basically, and went backstage with Benjy and got to meet Ram Dass for the first time. And he said something, I can't remember exactly the words. When he met me the first time, he said, I didn't know Benjy had such a conscious wife, or like an aware wife, or something like that. And I just kind of like laughed it off. But thinking back on that, there was something he saw in me at that time. And when I told him about my dream after reading his book, he cried. He felt, that book sold almost the least copies of any book, but he said Miracle of Love was the most important book he ever wrote.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Yeah, that's a go-to for me. It's such medicine. As is your music. And another project you've been working on, which is just exquisite, is the song I Will Stand With You, which just powerful and gorgeous and heartbreaking and heart-opening and really appropriate for the times we're in. And so please describe the inspiration that came from that and what you were feeling. And it's just beautiful, and we got to share that far and wide as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because it's really important. There's been such a huge opening in our time to work on really ending racism, really taking it on now, not just sort of, above the surface, ignoring it anymore. We're really in it now. And it's been very inspiring to see so many people refuse to tolerate it anymore. And of course, we've had such a painful and violent time in my country this summer, with the deaths that are just even still happening. This week, somebody still got shot, and it's been so painful. And so this happened the week that George Floyd got shot and killed, murdered in Minnesota, which is my home state. And that same week, I had a friend who posted a video on Facebook, and she lives in Salt Lake City in the U.S., and somebody I've known for many years. And Benjy said, our friend Karen put out a video. You might want to check it out on Facebook. Now, I am really not on Facebook. You've probably noticed that. You don't see or hear too much from me. I'm trying to get like a little bit more outgoing, but
I hear you. I totally hear you.
But I saw her video, and basically she was talking about racism. She was talking about taking responsibility for ourselves, to just do something to help the situation. And then she talked about an experience she had just had in her city, where she was driving down the street and somebody ended up, cursing at her and calling her by a racial slur and just verbally attacking her while she was just out driving around her town, and it really made me sad and hurt that she was having to go through that. And she just sort of so eloquently described that experience. It really, really touched me. And so I was in my meditation within a couple of days of that experience, and I just started getting these images. And the image was that a bundle of sticks is stronger than a single stick. And I just remember the reason that came to me is that years ago, I used to take my Volvo to this shop. And the shop was run by an Asian family. And they had this picture in the lobby of their old family Volvo. This is like from decades and decades ago. And all the kids piled on the hood of the car. And next to that, they had a framed piece of art that had a bundle of sticks. And it said, "A bundle of sticks is stronger than a single stick. Stay together, and you'll always be strong." And so in my meditation, I had this thing about a bundle of sticks standing together and being stronger that way. And that's these words, "I will stand with you," just came all in the meditation. So I just came and started writing after I finished my meditation and started writing all these words down. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I read them at the Hanuman Festival Summit that they had. But I waited another week, and I was thinking, I haven't written a song in English for, maybe 10 years, maybe 12 years. I think maybe I'll have to find somebody else to write the music. But I just sat down with the guitar one day and said, well, let me just give it a shot. Let me just give it a shot and see what comes up. Because I'm used to writing Sanskrit chants all the time, But sure enough, it just came out really quickly, the music and the melody and how to put it all together. And then I kept having these inspirations for what to do next, how to make a little 1-minute video to promote the song so that people would know what it was about. We offer the song as a free giveaway on our website and ask people to donate to organizations working for racial justice. We have a list of suggestions there, but we're giving away the song for free because we want to get the message out. And we hope that it will just offer support to people that are on the front lines of the movement, to people that are feeling discouraged or grieving all of the, deaths and pain, and just help people feel that they are in this together, that we're all in this together.
Yeah, thank you. So beautiful. And yeah, it is such interesting times where so much is getting revealed and magnified and unraveled, and it's tumultuous times. And to combine with that, people out of work, people in isolation for so long. And I mean, no wonder why there's been so much outrage and anger and frustration and animosity, and apparently homicides have gone through the roof in the US in particular. I mean, people are losing their shit, and we need as many of these types of platforms to stand together, to sing together, to grieve together. We're in such divided times, and this tribalism where it feels almost like collectively people are both ready to kind of have outrage for one another, yet there's also a ripeness for awakening and opening our hearts and truly helping out one another. But we need practices, and we need to process the trauma and see these places that haven't been seen for so long, haven't been acknowledged, haven't been spoken about. So yeah, are you seeing light coming through? Are you seeing healing coming through? Or do you feel this is going to take some time?
I do think it is a long process. And I think that both the light and the dark are coming through more than ever.
Right.
It's both happening at once. And in a way, it's this building of tension as we are seeking resolution between these different forces inside of us, in our society, and in ourselves as individuals. And that is the nature of the age that we're in right now. And the things are coming to a head, and they're really coming out. But my deep belief is that we are all made of that one consciousness, the one love, that deep inside the essence of everything, that there is a loving force that exists in all of us. And so that to me is an optimistic thing, because that's what we're all moving toward. That's what we're all trying to find, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And that's the ultimate direction where we'll end up.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen on the way, it's hard to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and back to Neem Karoli Baba, and just bringing it into conversation of the guru in our current times of yoga and spirituality, but especially yoga and the more like neo-tantras and so forth. It's pretty common to kind of poo-poo, so to speak, the whole notion of the guru, especially over the last few years in particular, where quite a few leaders and gurus, it's been revealed how they've been abusive and exploiting their power role and sexual abuse and whatnot. So it's kind of understandable how there's a common perception of more negative perceptions of the guru and the shaman, the lead teacher, and so forth. Yet it does feel like we need leaders, we need a connection to these enlightened beings. And even that word enlightenment has been I've noticed in the last few years, poo-pooed as well, of this whole trip of enlightenment. It's a scam and there's no enlightened beings. And again, especially when we've put certain people on pedestals and, we give them the label enlightened, and then all of a sudden they're molesting and taking advantage of their power. So that seems to, as far as I've observed, kind of overshadowed a lot of the beauty of the guru. Mm-hmm. So it'd be nice and I think refreshing to get your perspective of the value of these enlightened beings, and in particular, speaking about Neem Karoli Baba, and that there are these beautiful beings that truly don't exploit their power. It is actually just love. And even though it may be rarer than the more glorified kind of media, kind of shining the light on the more destructive episodes we've seen with teachers and gurus, please talk about the beautiful aspect and how it can really help us right now.
Yes. Well, one of the things that you see constantly in Maharaji's stories, in Miracle of Love and other stories that people have written, is that he's in contact with a level of reality that most of us can't even really comprehend, and is able to convey the feeling of that to people, which is why if you look at photos of him, the people around him usually have these really amazing smiles on their face. They're like feeling this bliss that is radiating off of him, and they feel loved in a way they've always longed to feel loved. I've been really enjoying right now this book called Great Swan by Sri Ramakrishna. It's a book written by Les Hickson, and it's a beautiful book. It's absolutely beautiful. And one of the things that I'm getting from it most strongly right now is the way that Ramakrishna was always talking about what he called divine reality. That even within this really difficult reality that we experience in everyday life, there's still this beautiful undercurrent which has given birth to everything. And so it's just a way of being able to be attuned to that other level of existence, that other dimension that is the little nesting bowls or dolls that you see that get smaller and smaller, and what's really living inside of it on the deepest level. And so helps to take us through those different layers of experience of ourselves and into the deeper parts of our own hearts. And so with Sri Ramakrishna, because he was so in touch with that level, as was Neem Karoli Baba, they can't help but just exude that to the people around them. And then it helps us, even through books, to be able to experience that level ourselves. And there's a way that I'm working with right now, because there are some really difficult, painful things happening around in the world, is to use my practices of meditation and chanting to help myself remember that dimension of reality all the time, as
Yeah.
much as I can, in the midst of all this stuff, so that it can really be my anchor, so that it can help guide me and inform me in the actions that I take, and in my creativity, that helps me bring forth action into the world, to really every day just remember that that's there, that we can touch it and feel it and taste it in some way.
Yeah.
And these great beings are what help make that possible for us to do, that we can't automatically do for our own. And all the good practices that we do will also totally move us in that direction too. I think
Yeah.
there's something interesting things about the guru phenomenon. The gurus that I'm connected with are no longer in their bodies, which
Right.
makes it, harder for there to be some kind of a scandal. I think that
Yes.
when people get famous, and especially if they're in a very spiritually powerful position, they have no idea what's going to come at them. They have no idea
Right.
how much they're going to be tested, tempted, how tempting it is to say, "Oh yes, I am really that great person, that great exalted being," and they can make excuses for doing things that are beyond the limits of what they should be doing. But I don't think it's easy for us to understand either, with the kind of pressure, the unique pressures that they're under. Not to make excuses for that. When you have that level of responsibility, you have to try to step up and be a really good person in that. And
Yeah.
yet I understand that it's extremely difficult, and that most people are tested beyond the limits of where they can hold their boundaries.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because right now it seems generally it's just outrage and anger, which again, rightfully so, but it seems there needs to then come in an empathy, an understanding of what a unique position that is. And then also how can we bring it into conscious conversation? Like, it is
Yeah.
such a common occurrence, especially in certain religious sects, but it's been pretty prevalent in yoga. And do we just get angry, and do we just push them aside and penalize, or can we bring in a bit more nuance and a bit more compassion and empathy, and actually like help these upcoming teachers, these upcoming leaders, again, just looking at what's been happening, especially men, and support them in the ways that we've seen hasn't been really being brought into conversation. Right now, it's just outrage. But then what? How can we help that next healing, that next evolution? Which, yeah, that was really refreshing to hear. It sounds very balanced.
I think that I'd like to talk for a second about what my teacher is, Paul Malur Ortega. He's created Blue Throat Yoga, my meditation teacher. And he has this wonderful way of framing what he calls adult spirituality. I mean, most of us start with this thing when we encounter a great teacher or a guru, where we do childhood spirituality, which is we worship that person. They tell us everything that we can and can't do. We look to them for every answer, for every question directly.
Right.
And then what happens is, when they are human beings or screw up, then we go into what Paul would call adolescent spirituality, which that's when we get really mad. We want to smash things. We want to totally throw out everything that they ever gave us. And then there's the more balanced stance of adult spirituality, which is where we make decisions about what we do. We, make choices about how much power we give to somebody else. We take responsibility for the feeling and experience that we have on the spiritual path. And then we own our own experience. And, if we could maybe identify what this process is that people go through that derails them so much when they're in the teacher role, maybe we can all know that's what most of them do. Most of them end up going through that kind of a process. So what is that process? How does that really happen? And how do people get so isolated in those situations that they don't have anybody giving them feedback really close that they can listen to? So
Yeah.
how do we
No, I
not
appreciate that.
yeah, and how do we not completely give ourselves away in the process? That's something that we can learn.
Right. Yeah, interesting. And let's dive deeper into this method of blue throat yoga, blue throat meditation or blue throat yoga.
It's called Blue Throat Yoga, but
Mm-hmm.
it's meditation. And really, if you look back on the Yoga Sutra, and yoga used to be really meditation is what it was, and we've redefined it in our Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so this is why we call it Blue Throat Yoga, because yoga and is meditation also.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful method that has its roots in the Kashmir Shaiva tradition, the tantric philosophy of North India in the Kashmir region. And right around the year 1000, there was a real kind of a renaissance with all kinds of texts being written, um, a really deep process of going into meditation, into very powerful sadhana that was very transforming for people. And the the practices were not widely disseminated to lots of people. You worked with a teacher, you received the practices in private in an initiated way, but then they wrote all these fantastic texts that described the experience. And so my teacher is one of the world's foremost scholars in that tradition, and has spent much of his life, teaching this stuff and translating these texts himself. And yet he was meditating since he was a teenager, and has been meditating, for over 50 years now. And then
What's his name
started
again?
Paul Muller Ortega.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. He grew up in Venezuela, but then went
Mm-hmm.
to his education in the U.S. And so he's done just a really great job of, with the vast knowledge that he has, is helping to create an authentic practice for us that's rooted in ancient traditions in an authentic way,
Mm.
and gives us practices to do that are very powerful and transforming, and yet they are householder practices that we do in our everyday life as everyday people. They're not for people that need to go off in a cave and just do the practice. It's how we show up in the world as our best possible self, by taking
Mm.
the time to go deep inside of ourselves a couple times a day.
Yeah, nice. That sounds really potent, and I'm curious. It's definitely sparked a curiosity. And Joe and I often talk a lot about modern day yoga. For one, how you also touched upon, often there is a separation. People either are doing yoga, quote unquote, or meditation, and I totally agree. It's the same. It's the same path. But we chew on the common situation in modern day yoga where so much is available. So much is available, and that's a blessing, but it can also dilute the practice. And we often talk about so many students missing exactly what you described, of that student teacher relationship, that direct transmission. And also, again, it's beautiful that we have access to nearly everything at our fingertips. But often these yoga practices are kind of just like given away, which again is beautiful. It's a beautiful, abundant time with that. But compared to really needing to put in the time and these pilgrimages that a lot of our teachers and we've done as well, there's value to really putting in the time and like efforting and showing your reverence and your respect to really get that teaching. And it seems rarer these days, which again is both beautiful, yet it does seem like a metaphor that we often bring up is that of looking for water, like digging for water, and like digging a little bit, not finding water, going over there, digging a little bit again, not finding water, and digging all these little holes, yet really just got to dig that one hole and keep digging deeper, which seems like the equivalent of finding an effective method and really getting the transmission, having that teacher-student relationship going deep, going deep, going deep. as opposed to the kind of modern smorgasbord model. It's often described a bit of this, a bit of that, which again, I do a little bit of that and I see value in it. And I'm grateful for being able to tune into different teachings from different methods. And I do love that. Yet that depth of what you're describing, of like, because I actually asked you to, would you guide a meditation? And I actually respect that you're like, well, no, like it takes longer. It's a real process to get it, which I actually really appreciate. That's really, I think, rare these days and beautiful. And again, not too long ago, we had to really try, like really go out of our way to get these teachings. And I think with that, we just pay more attention, plain and simply, like we pay more attention. There's a bit more respect, similar to what we see in like martial arts, where, you know, you don't just get given that next stripe on your belt. You really got to put in the time and again, put in the time. And then you get given that stripe and then eventually that next belt. It seems like is it a similar type of process of going deep into this method where you don't just get given the teaching, you gotta really show up?
It's more like that to become a teacher. But
Right.
I mean, the initial commitment to learn the method that I'm doing, I teach it in 2 2-hour sessions. Sometimes that's in a small group, sometimes it's individually. And then I do a special one-to-one session where the person receives their actual practice. But we spend the other hours giving all the background for how do you do this properly? What does it mean? Where does it come from? How do you know if you're practicing correctly? What are some of the things that might go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
How does this actually work? Why does meditation work and how does it work? And so, you know, within, after those first couple sessions, then somebody has a practice that they can do for their entire life. However, then you can decide, how deep do I want to go into studying?
Mm-hmm.
And do I want to continue to expand my practice? Do I want it to keep deepening it? Do I want to start going on some retreats? So you can decide for yourself. Once you have the basic practice, it's yours for life, and you don't
Right.
have to do anything. You don't need anybody else, but there's a whole rich world. So for me, in my process with Paul, I did a series of year-long trainings following the beginning of my practice, and then the last, I think, 2.5 years for me were teacher training. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole process from beginning to becoming teacher for me was 8 years. A person could do it in 4 or 5, probably, if they were really in a hurry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Cool.
so I appreciate the depth. I mean, so it's not everybody has that much time or energy to commit, and once you have a meditation practice, it will just automatically start giving you tremendous gifts right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you want to keep going deeper and deeper, there's an infinity of more.
Mm. Yeah, sounds beautiful. Very, very curious. And I do appreciate the householder aspect of it being
Especially for
very,
you with two
yeah,
little girls. Like,
I need
not one,
everything I
not
can
two, but
get to bring the practice into the household, you know, and your chants. I mean, so for me, what's really helped me integrate the practices into family life is mantra, really,
yes,
is
yeah.
mantra, both putting on albums such as Shantala and Benjy and Krishna Das, like putting it on and just have it in the background, which is, I think, that's powerful in itself. But then having a mantra, whether it's even just a silent mantra and repeating it as I go about my day, or maybe both, listening to it and chanting it. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful ways I've found to integrate the practice into household.
Hmm.
But so the notion of blue throat, so you touched upon it, it's got its roots in Kashmir Shaivism. And there's the story of Shiva converting the poison into nectar, the
Yes,
blue throat.
yes, yes.
And you've talked a little bit about your process of being a performer in a way, but you would also say that when you're doing kirtan, it's not a performance, but that typical performance anxiety does come up, right?
Hmm.
And would you relate to that kind of transmutation of when you're feeling nervous, that practice of like appreciating the nervousness and kind of like Shiva, like hold it in your throat and convert it. Can you relate to that? What's your process of working with nervousness, anxiety?
Yeah, I love that analogy. Talking about that blue throat conversion of the poison and transforming it. So, because our practice is such an analogy for transforming the poison within ourselves, within society, within the world, and yeah, I mean, you know, so many of us, I think, spend our lives just wishing we could make something go away, some quality that we have that we just wish it would be gone and just want to get rid of it. And I know I felt that way about anxiety and about performance anxiety. It was about 15 years ago now, but I basically had a nervous breakdown. I was nervous before then, but then it really went to a whole other dimension. And so ever since then, I'm sort of in and out of working with that all the time in my life. And you know, what I had to learn at that time was, instead of trying to get rid of it, first of all, to open up to it and embrace it and walk in there with it and put my arms around it, really. Because you I have had to learn how to create a loving inner space around extremely difficult and trying emotions that come up. And you know, I really wish we were better as a culture, as a society, at doing that for each other, not only just inside of ourselves, but for each other. It's like, because it's so lonely when you're feeling extreme emotions and when you think you shouldn't be having them and want to make them go away. And I think one of the gifts, there have been so many gifts from my meditation practice, but this idea that we can have these really strong feelings and still be in touch with this loving place, with this place of our deepest consciousness, our source inside, can be there with the extreme emotions. And that is one of the things that has really helped me to go forward, because my meditation practice really, and kirtan practice also, really helps me feel that place in myself that is deeper than that, deeper than the levels of fear that are going through, even if they're really strong.
Yeah. So like, say you're really nervous showing up to a kirtan or a performance, please feel into and describe, like, do you just show up and do it and it gradually soothes it? Do you bring in a particular method, or do you, like you just touched upon, do you just hug it? Do you just embrace it? Because I can relate to it. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that situation of anxiety preventing them from showing up to whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah, I mean, those moments, those are truly the moments of being a warrior, where you're a warrior for love, and you have to show up to be of service. I mean, it's all about being of service, right? And excuse me one sec.
Yeah, I'll join you on that.
Yeah. Usually for me, there's lots of anticipation time that is very challenging, that comes in the minutes or hours before. And so I'm really doing my best to witness the landscape of my own thoughts, because when I went through the nervous breakdown, I found a wonderful therapist who helped me with a method called ACT, which is called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And it's about this thing of just really showing up deeply for ourselves and not trying to change it, not trying to make it be different, to wade in there with it. And so I do my best to be there, give myself like a loving environment inside, and then witness the thoughts that I'm having. Like, the thoughts are catastrophic, and with some practice, I can get to this place where it's like, oh, that was a thought. Because what happens is that our old brain, our nervous system, responds to our thoughts as if they're actually happening. It can't really distinguish the difference between a thought of a scenario and the actual scenario. And so when we start to be able to be witness that process happening. I call that like standing under the wave. The waves are crashing over me, but I'm so deep that I'm watching them go by, and I'm not getting smashed.
Yeah.
And I can go, oh, that was just a thought. It didn't really happen. It was just a thought, you know. So,
Yeah.
and then when I'm singing, when I'm chanting, then I also do my best to be aware of that part of myself that is not lost in fear. That part of myself that is aware of my loving nature. That part of myself that I think about Maharaji a lot. I think about what it is that I'm singing to, and that source of the universe of love that lives inside of me. And so I'm doing my best to remember that and connect to that in those moments, and to sing from that place and to that place. And sometimes things are rocky at first for me. I might feel really shaky. And sometimes that passes quickly, and sometimes it doesn't pass, and sometimes it isn't really there. So it varies quite a lot.
Yeah. So beautiful. And thank you for sharing, because a lot of people would put you on a pedestal and would be in, the audience and listening to you and seeing you, and it's an angelic energy, and there's such a perfection of voice, and you and Benjy are just so masterful. It would be easy for one to put you on a pedestal and to think, she's perfect, she doesn't have any anxiety. So it's really beautiful for you to share of your process, because I think it adds to the potency of it. And having the privilege to get to know you and Benjy and see your process, it's like when we're on retreat and stuff like that, like really feeling you show up and seeing you like get that conversion of poison into nectar. That I think, I know, adds to the transformation in the room. And I think it gives people permission as well to just show up even when they're a nervous wreck. Like there's beauty to that transparency.
Yes.
I know in classes and retreats when I've had an emotional experience, and I'm sharing or teaching, and it just everything unravels, and I become like raw and just fully transparent, and maybe even end up in tears. And often people share of like, all the classes were great, but that moment when you were just raw and real was actually what helped me the most in this whole week or month or whatever. Hear that a lot. And people are, it seems, yearning for that authenticity, especially in our leaders and our teachers. We, especially with some of the leaders in the world right now, we've kind of gotten used to fakeness or like just lying, a fabrication of ego. So to see leaders show up really, really human, like both divine and exquisite, and also really authentic and human and honest with their anxieties and their hang-ups. And I think that's part of us standing up together, getting really transparent and really honest, and just sharing of our process.
That is so beautiful. I couldn't agree more in the importance of authenticity in whatever role it is that we're having as a teacher or a healer. It's one of the things I loved about Ram Dass. He was always talking about his things that weren't perfect.
Yeah.
It was one of the most charming things about what he did. And to be able to share that. And there have been times I'll go in front of an audience. In a workshop, I'll talk about it, being afraid. Sometimes from the stage, I will. I don't do it all the time. I also don't really want the people there to be there to help me, because I'm in a role of service.
Right.
And yet, like you, I've had the experience where I've felt that when I open up about what I'm feeling, that other people get that permission to do the same, and that it creates the whole atmosphere of vulnerability and having that be safe. And we all need that, and our groups and gatherings can really benefit from that level of openness.
Yeah. And Ram Dass would often talk about as well of keeping God in the room, keep the guru in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you were speaking of your methods of keeping the witness alive, keeping the witness in the situation, that loving awareness, as Ram Dass would put it. That seems to be helpful as well. And like being authentic, being like transparent with that, at the same time bringing in that loving witness that you were speaking of. Keep God in the room. That seems very helpful.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah,
God in the
because
room. Like even when I'm getting trapped by like dividing, like this tribalism that's going on in the world. I mean, I'm a part of it as well. Whether I like it or not, I'm a part of it as well. And I try to catch myself out, because like lovingly catch myself out when I'm adding to that divisiveness, that tribalism, and bring someone like Maharaji, or keep God in the room. And it helps me just see a bit broader than my own like narrow perception. It seems like collectively we need a bit more of that, this divide that we've spoken about for years together, this bridging of the divide, which we themed our retreat in Hawaii. How do we do this in a relational context, out in protests, out in these heated situations? Is it the same thing, or does it get more complex, our ability to bring these methods into the household, into your work? But then what about these really heated situations in the world right now?
I think many of us are really struggling with that right now, and kind of witnessing a lot of change in our communities. And I feel like a lot of things are happening in response to the losses and isolation that people are going through. And honestly, I'm still working on navigating some of this myself. I think that having compassion and understanding for what's driving people into extreme states is very important, because we are not in the everyday world that we knew. It's really different, and the kinds of stress and the amount of stress that many people are under, the grief and loss that many people are under, is extreme. And I think a lot of people are searching for something that they can understand, for something that makes it okay, for something that helps the world to make sense, and also just somewhere to put your energy, maybe to somebody to blame. I don't know.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it was Jack Cornfield that was speaking of like just what you were speaking of, but also like keep doing something you're joyful about, like doing the deep work and doing whatever we can in an activism way, or whatever we've got to offer of service. At the same time, keep a sense of playfulness. Keep doing something that brings up creativity, which you and Benjy do organically, but so many people don't. And it seems like we got to keep at least a little part of our day to just play, just like play or sing or dance or create some art. It feels like a little piece to just keeping the unfoldment occurring, because it is so seductive to get stuck in the confusion and the anger and the even the righteousness. So quietening the mind, bringing in the witness, bringing in the God, and let's all not forget to have a little play and a little laugh every now and then, which is hard right now for a lot of people. I know.
It is hard, there's so many things that I'm thinking of as you're talking, and let me see. There was something that I wanted to say, because you're bringing up so many great ideas for me.
We got time.
I think it's really easy to get lost in one extreme or the other, which is I'm not going to feel anything, and I'm not going to open up to what's really going on inside, or I'm going to get completely lost in one aspect of it.
Right.
And so finding somewhere in the middle where we're feeling and we're open to our experience, even if it's really uncomfortable, and yet we know that there's something that exists beyond it, and
Yeah.
we develop ways to tap into that, so that we don't get lost in either shutting down or just going too far into one extreme, so that we, can't make good decisions or maintain positive relationships.
Mm.
And I think that's really important. And the other things I wanted to address is the idea of creativity and play. And for me, get really really serious. I am somebody, even though I said I'm doing a household or meditation practice, I'm somebody that could be kind of like a nun or live like a really monkish sort of life. And one of the reasons that I love my husband so much is that he always makes me laugh, and he does it on purpose. When I get too serious, then he just gets really silly, and I desperately need that. But one of the things that I've been doing, because I've also had more time to do it right now, is I try my best to structure creative time,
Mm.
structure playtime. Because we're at home and we run our business from home, as I'm sure you're in the same situation. You can work all the time, right? And you, when that happens, you don't really get that feeling of your nervous system letting down.
Right.
And so even if you're doing your practices, now I'm going to do my practice, now I'm going to do this, it's like, so we have been trying to schedule one day a week, which we call our Sabbath day. It's usually not when the typical Jewish Sabbath is, but we try to have a day off where we're really not working. And we're also trying, you know, it's all relative. We do our best to disengage from technology for some of those days.
Yeah.
And what I've had to do with the creative process, because I tend to avoid some of the things that are most important, even though creativity is extremely important. But what I try to do is schedule it. And it's kind of ironic, since I wrote this song, I Will Stand With You, I have been kind of avoiding my creativity practice. I think I was so blown out that that happened the way that it did, that I've been
Mm.
almost a little bit afraid to get back into
Yeah.
my
Wow.
muse.
Mm.
But I have been writing some chants this last few months too, writing some new chants, and been going in a real goddess direction with that, really connecting
Mm.
with the sacred feminine in a way that I haven't for a long time.
Beautiful.
But I have to put it on the calendar. I have one day a week where I'm going to just, for 1 to 2 hours, make some kind of creative time where I launch into the unknown, where I might write or I might just sing or play. And if I'm tired, I might just take a nap. Whatever is the authentic, expression of that moment, I just try to put that little slot of time in every week. And I've got to get back into doing it next week.
Yeah.
But I actually did make plans for my creative time this week. I noticed sometimes I do that,
Yeah.
right? I could move the creative time to a different day,
Yes.
and I have done that too sometimes. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
smart. And I think that's really helpful. And we do need to be kind of disciplined with it. Like it's so
yeah,
easy with our phones and computers and working from home in particular to just keep working and just keep working. And then it can become dysfunctional. I can identify with that for sure.
yeah.
And
I'm
just
sure you
like,
can.
yeah, I mean, I'll catch myself, being at the playground and like, oh, there's some stuff I got to catch up on. And I'm on my phone catching up on work. And it takes a real loving discipline to catch that out and see that it's not a great thing. It's not a great thing. It's not paying attention to the kids. I mean, shit could happen, but not just that. It's energetically just, it doesn't feel
Right.
right.
Yeah.
When I can really be honest with it, it doesn't feel right. It's draining. It's not optimum. It's not optimum for the production of the work. It's
Hmm.
distracted in both ways. So it's kind of win-win, but
Yeah.
it does take discipline with these
Yeah.
sneaky little smartphones. I mean, we can
Yeah.
literally do work anywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely got to carve out time as well, and got to be
Yeah.
disciplined as well to keep that witness alive when I'm getting sucked into an unconscious mode of working.
Yes. And I've also
Mm.
been struggling with addiction to the news,
Ah,
where I'm
yeah.
just like, look, that's what I'm doing on my phone right now, that I do too
Hmm.
much. So I try to do my best to designate some days where I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It's a really good reset.
Sure.
Because if I say, oh, I'm just not going to do it that much, but you have to really try to designate a time when that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Anyway, Heather, I want to respect your time. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we wrap this up?
Wow, that went really fast,
It
huh?
did. It did. It's such a delight
Wow, so
talking
nice.
with you, and we could just keep going. And it's so helpful for, I'm sure it's helpful for the listeners, and it's inspiring for me as well. And I really hope it helps people stay open in their heart and strong in their energy, and just keep going, keep opening through these current mad episodes.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to
Yeah.
share with people? They can get in touch with you at shantala.com, right?
It's shantalamusic.com.
Shantala Music.
Yeah, and we have all of our we right now. It's interesting. Right now, we don't have live events coming up at all, but we do have our September 11th release of the new album, which we'll be posting hopefully in the next few days. That'll be up on the website,
Beautiful.
um, and then yeah, and I'm doing my meditation work. I do that by appointment, and
And
sometimes I
people can do
schedule.
that via Zoom, can
Yeah,
they, or Skype,
I can
or
do
yeah.
that on Zoom. I can do it on
Cool.
Zoom. And so there's on the Shantala Music site has something about that as well.
Great.
And no, I just think it's important to try to remember what we every day what we do have that is good and what we have to be grateful for, and just remember to try to love ourselves the best that we
Yeah.
can when things are rough. And it's just such a I really appreciate being with you today. It's
Yeah, you
so
too, Heather.
wonderful to
Yeah.
connect with you. Please give big
Mm.
love to Joe and the kids. I've been doing Joe's classes on Glow.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
yeah, yeah. So she's in my life.
Good. Yeah, they're beautiful classes. Mm. Well,
Yeah, they
wonderful,
are.
Heather.
They really
Send my
are.
love to Benjy, and we'll connect soon. Be well.
Awesome. Take
Much
care,
love.
dear.
You too.
Lots of love to you too.
Yeah, love, love.